Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today, and today we're going to be talking about, just practical wisdom.
Yeah.
The kind that helps you deal with all the stuff life throws at you.
Right.
With, maybe a little more grace.
Yeah.
A little less stress.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of Stoic philosophy.
Right.
And the source material for this deep dive is a book called Focus on What Matters, a collection of Stoic letters on living well.
Yeah. And, I think you'll find that even though Stoicism has been around for centuries,
Right.
it's surprisingly relevant to the challenges that we're facing today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this book is like a toolkit, for kind of mastering your inner world.
Yeah.
Understanding yourself better.
Mm-hmm.
And even, achieving goals.
Right.
While, dealing with all the curveballs that life throws at you.
Yeah.
So, let's start with the inner world stuff.
Oh.
And specifically anxiety.
Right.
Because who hasn't felt that lately? The Stoics had a really interesting perspective on anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is at the root of it all?
Well, I think the Stoics believed that it all kind of stems from focusing too much on things we can't actually control.
Right.
So, think about it. How often do you get worked up over, a frustrating commute or...
all the time.
Yeah, or a news story that just makes your blood boil.
Oh my gosh, especially with social media, I mean,
right.
It's so easy to get caught in that doom scrolling, and
Yeah.
You're right, those things are totally outside of my control.
Right.
But how do you just stop stressing about them?
Well, the Stoics would say that, it's about practicing indifference to these, external factors.
Right.
It doesn't mean you don't feel the emotions,
Right.
but you don't let those emotions rule your day.
Okay.
And the author of this book actually gives a really relatable example.
Okay.
He was talking about how during the pandemic he was finding himself just riddled with anxiety, and he realized later how much energy he was wasting on things that he couldn't directly influence.
So what's the solution? Do I just bury my head in the sand and pretend the world isn't a little crazy sometimes?
Well, no, not exactly.
Okay.
It's more about shifting your focus
Okay.
to what you can control, like your actions, your thoughts,
Right.
your reactions.
Okay.
Instead of getting swept up in the anxiety of the unknown, ask yourself, what can I do right now that aligns with, my values and my goals?
I can see how that would be helpful.
Right.
It's almost like instead of spiraling about things I can't change, I can put that energy into something productive.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like taking control back.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And, the book actually suggests a really interesting way to do this,
Okay.
especially if you're feeling unmotivated or kind of lost.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed how learning something new
Yeah.
can give you a little boost of energy?
Oh, totally. It's like my brain is excited
Yes.
to have something new to kind of chew on.
Exactly. Well, the author found that, during periods of low motivation,
Okay.
he would just pick up a book on a totally new subject
Uh-huh.
and just dive in. And in his case, it was human history.
Okay.
It was so energizing for him.
Yeah.
And, even if he couldn't immediately apply the knowledge he was gaining, the act of learning itself
Right.
helped him to shake off, those feelings of stagnation.
That's a great reminder that learning doesn't always have to have a practical application right away.
Right.
Sometimes it's just about feeding your mind and your curiosity.
Exactly.
But this book, it goes beyond just acquiring knowledge. It emphasizes actually using it.
Right.
There's a whole section on using Stoic principles to become a better investor, which I thought was really fascinating.
Well, absolutely. I mean, knowledge without action.
Yeah.
It's like having a toolbox full of tools and never using them to actually build anything.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the author argues that, understanding financial history
Yeah.
and market trends can actually help you weather the emotional ups and downs
Absolutely.
of investing because you have a clearer understanding of the bigger picture.
It's like if you know that market dips are a normal part of the cycle,
Right.
you're less likely to panic and make a rash decision
Right.
when things get turbulent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes the emotion out of it.
Okay, so we're taking control of our anxieties by focusing on what we can influence, using knowledge to our advantage.
Right.
But what about those inevitable disappointments that life throws our way?
Yeah.
The book dives into that too, and I have to say it's kind of a wake-up call.
It is.
Yeah.
The Stoics, and especially Epictetus, were pretty blunt about this. They basically said that it's foolish
Right.
to expect things we don't control to go our way all the time.
Yeah, he uses some pretty stark examples,
Right,
like,
yeah.
Expecting our loved ones to live forever or, for everyone we meet to be completely honest with us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but he's right.
Yeah.
So much of life is just like simply outside of our control.
Right. And the author of Focus on What Matters illustrates this perfectly with a story about his experience trying to traditionally publish his book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he faced rejections and uncertainty and, the very real possibility of major disappointment.
So what did he do? Did he just give up?
He chose to focus on what he could control.
Okay.
He put his energy into writing the best book proposal possible, believing in his work.
Okay.
And that helped him to stay grounded.
Right.
And to, avoid getting swept up in the emotional roller coaster of the publishing world.
It reminds me of that classic Stoic idea, accept what you can't control and focus on what you can.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, but like putting it into practice is a whole other story.
It is, and that's where this book really shines. It offers practical advice for actually putting these principles into action in your own life.
So we've talked about managing anxiety and dealing with disappointment. What other inner world wisdom does this book have in store for us?
Well, one of the key themes that keeps coming up is the importance of self-awareness.
Okay.
The author really encourages you to get to know yourself deeply and act in accordance with your true nature.
He has this great story about buying an SUV.
Right.
And it's so relatable. He convinced himself he needed this big car for adventures and for moving things.
Yeah.
But in reality, he ended up using it just like his old car.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how we often make decisions based on who we think we should be rather than who we actually are.
Have you ever bought something you thought you needed?
Yeah.
Only to realize later it was more about keeping up with an image.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for marketing sometimes.
Right. But that's a great question to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Am I making this decision because it genuinely aligns with my values and who I am? Or is it about something else?
Yeah. That's the kind of self-reflection the Stoics were all about.
Right.
And, Epictetus, for example, stressed the importance of thinking through decisions carefully.
Okay.
Considering both the good and the bad consequences before jumping in.
Okay.
And, he used this analogy of someone impulsively leaving their ship on a shore excursion, only to find that, the ship has set sail without them.
Oh, that would be rough.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a powerful metaphor for the consequences of not aligning our actions with our true desires and our values.
Are we chasing the latest trend just because everyone else is? Or are we making choices that are really in line with our, long-term goals and who we want to be?
Yeah, exactly. Stoicism is all about living a life that's true to yourself, not a life that's dictated by external pressures or expectations.
And this idea of managing your mind,
Yeah.
that's another key piece of the puzzle. What really stood out to you in the book about that?
Well, there's this quote by Marcus Aurelius that I thought was so powerful. And he said, what am I making of my mind? What am I using it for?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a simple question, but it really makes you stop and think.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The author goes on to talk about, all these useless thoughts that we all have. Like replaying conversations over and over in our head.
Right.
Or getting caught up in daydreams that don't lead anywhere.
And he's not just talking about abstract concepts here.
Right.
He shares his own experience of, replaying past trading mistakes over and over again.
Yeah.
And realizing it wasn't changing the outcome.
Right.
It was just keeping him stuck in this cycle of negativity. And he found that, journaling about these thought patterns helped him become more aware of them.
Right.
And then to make conscious changes.
It's like anything else. If you want to improve,
Yeah.
you have to be aware of what you're doing in the first place.
Exactly. And, the Stoics believed that our minds are, incredibly powerful tools, but they need to be trained and guided, just like anything else.
Yeah.
The book uses this great metaphor of a fortress. Our minds need to be protected from outside influences that might try to, weaken our resolve or distract us from our goals.
That reminds me of that story about the Boston Celtics fan.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that one?
The guy who was obsessed with all those tiny details about the players' lives.
Yeah.
That had absolutely no bearing on their performance on the court.
Right. It just goes to show how easy it is to get distracted by things that don't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, and the author ties this into the importance of independent thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And he used the legendary investor Jesse Livermore,
Okay.
an example.
Okay.
Livermore would actually retreat from Wall Street to maintain clarity of thought.
Okay.
And to avoid being swayed by the opinions of others.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah.
But it makes sense if you're constantly bombarded with like information and opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know what you truly think or believe.
Right, and that's why the Stoics place such a high value on focus.
Right.
Directing your attention to what's truly essential.
Right.
And tuning out all that noise.
In fact, the author argues that everyone should have like a personal passion project, something that they completely control.
Yeah.
And that brings them joy.
Right.
Regardless of what's happening in the outside world.
Yeah, love that idea.
It's a brilliant way to cultivate that focus and that sense of purpose.
And speaking of focus, the book also dives into this concept of like single-minded focus.
Okay.
You know, really zeroing in on a specific goal.
Okay. Yeah. What were your thoughts on that section?
Well, it definitely highlighted the incredible progress that can be made with laser focus.
Right.
You know, the author himself wrote an entire book draft in just 1 month.
Wow.
By devoting all of his energy to it.
Okay.
But he also points out the potential downsides of this kind of intensity.
Right.
And he quotes David Goggins.
Okay.
Who warns that, you know, this level of focus can really upset your life balance.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. It is, for sure.
Yeah.
The book suggests, you know, finding that sweet spot by choosing like a few key areas of life to focus on, the ones that truly align with your values.
Right.
Rather than trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, it's like anything else. Too much of a good thing can be detrimental in the long run.
Yeah, it's all about finding that balance, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of balance, the book offers a definition of like a healthy mind that I thought was really insightful.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
The author describes a healthy mind as one that's peaceful, consistent focus, and secure.
Okay.
And then he contrasts that with an unhealthy mind.
Right. Which is prone to worry, inconsistency, lack of focus, and insecurity.
Yeah, that's a really clear distinction.
Yeah.
And it ties beautifully into that core Stoic principle of accepting human imperfection.
Right.
You know, we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's how we handle those mistakes that defines us.
It's about recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, we can still strive to cultivate a healthier, more balanced state of mind.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And speaking of journeys, we're about to embark on the next part of our exploration.
Okay.
Diving deeper into what it means to truly know yourself.
Let's do it. Welcome back. So we've been talking about, you know, like those core Stoic principles for mastering your inner world, managing anxiety, dealing with disappointment, getting a handle on those runaway thoughts we all experience sometimes.
Yeah.
Now let's kind of delve a little deeper.
Into what it means to truly know yourself.
Right. Yeah. One of the things this book really emphasizes is like the power of understanding your own inner strength.
Okay.
And then using that strength to act in accordance with your values. You know, it's about recognizing that you actually have more agency than you might think, even when things feel really tough.
That reminds me of the story the author shares about almost quitting writing early in his career.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he was facing a lot of challenges.
Right.
And that self-doubt was creeping in. But then he had this realization that changed everything.
So he realized he had a choice. He could either give in to those negative thoughts and give up.
Right.
Or he could choose a more empowering narrative and keep going.
Right.
And it was like a real pivotal moment for him.
I love how he connects that to the Stoic idea of changing the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not about denying reality or pretending that things are easy, but it's about consciously choosing how you interpret events and how those interpretations shape your actions.
Exactly. The Stoics believed that we are, in a sense, the authors of our own life stories. You know, we have the power to change our perspective.
Right.
And that can have such a profound impact on our resilience and well-being.
Right.
Think about it. Have you ever noticed how two people can go through like the same difficult experience, but one person comes out of it stronger?
Yeah.
And the other one seems to crumble.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly.
But it's not just about surviving. It's about like using those experiences to learn and grow.
That's exactly it.
Right.
And this book really encourages you to tap into that inner strength.
Okay.
It also challenges you to think deeply about your self-worth and where it truly comes from.
Okay.
There's this amazing quote from Seneca that I think sums it up beautifully.
Okay.
He said, think that nothing deserves admiration except the mind, which being itself great counts nothing else as great.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that, true self-worth isn't about external validation.
Right.
It's not about the car you drive or the clothes you wear or, how many followers you have on social media.
Right.
It's about the quality of your mind, your character, your values.
Exactly. And the author actually connects this to the craziness of, modern day consumerism, all those Black Friday sales and the pressure to just buy.
Right.
And it's a good reminder to ask yourself, are those things truly adding value to my life?
Right.
Or am I just trying to fill some kind of void?
It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle, thinking that happiness comes from having more stuff. But the Stoics would say true happiness, true fulfillment comes from within. It's about, cultivating your inner world and living in alignment with your values.
And speaking of values, the book also emphasizes how important it is to make sure that your actions actually line up with those values, even when it's hard.
Right.
The author shares a story about leaving a party where drug use was happening.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it might have been awkward
Yeah.
or uncomfortable to do so.
I admire that. It's so easy to just kind of go along with the crowd, even when something feels off.
Right.
But he chose to prioritize his values over social pressure.
Exactly. And there's a great quote from Epictetus that really speaks to this.
Okay.
He said, decide first what type of person you want to be and stick to it. Be the same person whether you are by yourself or with others. Yeah, it's about integrity.
Right.
Being true to yourself in every situation, not just when it's convenient.
That's a great reminder. It's easy to kind of be on your best behavior when you're around people you want to impress.
Right.
But true integrity shows up in those quieter moments.
Yeah.
When no one's watching.
Absolutely. And this idea of integrity, it ties into another important Stoic concept.
Okay.
Making better decisions. The book talks a lot about this tendency we all have to let other people's opinions influence our choices.
Right.
Which can lead to self-doubt and ultimately dissatisfaction.
It's like we're constantly looking for approval from others.
Right.
Second-guessing ourselves, feeling like we're not really in control of our own lives.
Right. And the Stoics would say, hey, focus on what you can control.
Right.
Even when unexpected things happen.
Okay.
And the author uses this really vivid analogy. Imagine you're on a cruise.
Okay.
And you go on a shore excursion. You're having a great time exploring the island.
Okay.
And then suddenly you get called back to the ship because it's leaving.
Oh, no. I'd be panicking.
Right. But it's a great metaphor for how life can throw us curveballs.
Right.
We can make all the plans we want, but sometimes things happen that are totally outside of our control.
Right.
Like the pandemic, for example.
Right.
It was this huge reminder that we don't have complete control over everything.
That's for sure. I think a lot of us learned that lesson the hard way for the past few years.
Right.
But so what's the Stoic approach to dealing with those unexpected events?
The book connects this idea of unexpected events to the Stoic practice of viewing everything in life as borrowed.
Okay.
Like a library book.
Okay.
It encourages a sense of detachment from material possessions and outcomes while still allowing you to appreciate them.
It's like that Buddhist idea of non-attachment, isn't it?
Yes.
You can enjoy things without clinging to them too tightly.
And the author is careful to point out that this doesn't mean that you can't care deeply about your relationships.
Right.
Or your work or any of that.
Okay.
It's about finding that healthy balance between engagement and detachment.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that everything is temporary, but that doesn't mean we can't experience joy and fulfillment in the present moment.
Exactly. And speaking of preparing for the unexpected,
Okay.
another Stoic strategy that the book explores is this idea of mentally preparing for difficult times. I know it might sound a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah. How can you prepare for something bad happening?
Well, the idea is that by considering, potential negative events,
Right.
you can actually reduce anxiety and increase gratitude for what you have right now.
So it's like a mental exercise.
Yeah.
Thinking through potential challenges.
Right.
So that you're not completely blindsided if they actually happen.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And the author shares a story about a friend who did this.
Okay.
He actually sat down and calculated the limited time that he had left to spend with his aging parents.
Wow, that's intense.
It is.
But I can see how that would shift your perspective.
Yeah. It helped him appreciate the time he had with them even more.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder that life is precious and impermanent. We don't know what tomorrow holds.
Right.
So it's essential to cherish the people we love and the experiences that we have right now.
It's like that saying, don't take anything for granted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, the book emphasizes that life is full of these ups and downs.
Right.
It's not always going to be smooth sailing.
Right.
And there's this great quote from Marcus Aurelius that captures this beautifully. He said, the world's cycles never change up and down from age to age.
That's so true. We tend to think that life should be this constant upward trajectory.
Right.
But the Stoics understood that hardship and setbacks are inevitable parts of the journey.
And they didn't just accept this.
Right.
They believed that those challenges could actually make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
The author even tells a story about a friend who had a string of bad luck all in 1 year.
Okay.
A knee injury, the pandemic, a back injury, and then he got COVID twice.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
Yeah, it was a rough year for sure. Yeah. But his story is a great reminder that, sometimes life throws a whole bunch of curveballs at you all at once.
Right.
And it's how you respond to those challenges that truly matters.
So it's not about avoiding the hard stuff. It's about learning how to navigate it.
Exactly.
With grace and resilience.
The Stoics believed in playing the roles we are given in life to the best of our ability.
Okay.
Bringing our unique style and perspective to each situation. They saw hardship as an opportunity for growth and resilience.
Right.
Not something to be feared or avoided.
I love that. So it's like, instead of getting upset that you were given a difficult role in life,
right,
you focus on how you can play that role to the best of your ability.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay.
And this ties back to that core Stoic principle we talked about earlier. Focusing on what you can control.
Right.
You can't always control the events that happen to you.
Right.
But you can control your reactions, your attitude, your choices.
So even when things feel really tough, there's always something we can do to empower ourselves.
Absolutely. There's always a choice to be made.
Okay.
Are you going to let circumstances dictate your life?
Right.
Or are you going to take control and choose a different path?
And that leads us perfectly into the next section of the book, which is all about getting unstuck from those downward spirals.
Right.
That can happen, when life throws you a curveball.
Yeah, this is where those practical Stoic strategies really come into play.
Right. So let's dive into those, because I think we could all use a little help with that from time to time. Welcome back.
It's amazing how much ground we've covered already. From taming anxiety to making those tough decisions.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But now we're moving into something that might surprise you.
Okay.
How Stoicism can actually help us build stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
Right.
I think a lot of people might assume that a philosophy focused on inner strength would be kind of
solitary.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Stoics actually placed a really high value on connection and community.
Right, they did.
They just had a very specific view of what true friendship meant.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about casual acquaintances or social media connections. Yeah. So what did they consider true friendship? The author of Focus on What Matters really challenges this modern tendency to collect, hundreds of Facebook friends or Instagram followers.
Right.
He even quotes Seneca, who wasn't exactly shy about calling out what he called friendships of convenience.
Right. So Seneca was basically saying that those surface level relationships, the ones that are based on self-interest or social climbing.
Okay.
Those tend to fade away when things get tough.
Right.
But true friendship, on the other hand, is about mutual support, shared values, and a deep understanding that goes beyond just, having fun together.
To illustrate this, the author shares a story about his own experience with enduring friendship. He talks about his friend Quincy, who he's been close with for over a decade.
Wow.
And, they've supported each other through thick and thin, celebrating each other's successes, offering comfort during difficult times.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's a really, beautiful example of what true friendship looks like in action.
It is, and it reminds us that real connection isn't about quantity. It's about quality.
Right.
The Stoics believe that, surrounding yourself with people who share your values and who genuinely support your growth is essential for a fulfilling life.
I love that it's about, building that community that lifts you up.
Right.
And challenges you to be your best self.
Exactly. And speaking of being your best self, the book also highlights the importance of sharing your joy with others. Might sound kind of obvious.
Yeah.
But in our busy lives, it's so easy to forget to express appreciation for the people who matter most to us.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
I get so caught up in my own to-do list, and I forget to just stop and appreciate the good things and the good people in my life.
It happens to the best of us. But the Stoics believed that sharing our joy with others actually amplifies it.
Okay.
And the author uses a quote from Seneca that really stuck with me. And Seneca was talking about how we should share, our most valuable possessions.
Right.
And he said that this includes sharing our joys with our friends.
Well, I love that, because what's the point of achieving something great if you have no one to celebrate with?
Exactly. It's a reminder that relationships are meant to enrich our lives, not just add to our to-do list.
Okay. And, when it comes to navigating those inevitable ups and downs, the Stoics had a lot to say about dealing with envy and comparison, which are things I think we all struggle with sometimes.
Especially in the age of social media.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right.
It's so easy to get sucked into comparing yourself to others and feeling like you're not good enough or successful enough or happy enough.
The Stoics had a really interesting approach to overcoming envy.
Okay.
Instead of letting those feelings fester, they suggested using other people's successes as inspiration and motivation for your own growth.
So instead of feeling resentful or bitter, you actually use that energy to fuel your own journey.
Exactly.
I like that.
And the author uses the example of the rapper J. Cole,
who
early in his career was really focused on getting validation from, more established artists.
Right.
But over time, he evolved.
Okay.
To create music that was entirely his own.
Right.
Without relying on features from other musicians.
It's a great example of, finding that inner confidence and creating something authentic.
Yeah.
Without needing the approval of others.
Exactly. And now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that might feel a little heavier. Okay. How to deal with hard times. This is something that the Stoics had a lot to say about.
Yeah.
And I think their wisdom is more relevant now than ever.
You're right. With everything going on in the world right now, the pandemic, economic uncertainty, political division, it feels like a lot of people are struggling to cope.
It's important to acknowledge those anxieties and uncertainties because they're very real.
Yeah.
But the book reminds us that, periods of hardship are just part of the human experience.
Right.
We can draw strength from knowing that, countless people throughout history have faced their own challenges and come out the other side.
The author actually shares a really powerful story about refugees fleeing a war-torn country.
Yeah.
People who had to leave everything behind and start their lives over from scratch.
It's a stark reminder that life can change in an instant.
Right.
And sometimes those changes are beyond our control.
That's for sure.
It's a humbling reminder, for sure. But it also highlights the incredible resilience of the human spirit.
Right. And, amidst all those challenges, the book emphasizes the importance of finding gratitude, even for the smallest things.
Yes.
I love that it's so easy to focus on what's going wrong.
Right.
But when you take a moment to appreciate the good things, even simple things like a warm cup of coffee or a sunny day, it can really shift your perspective.
Exactly. And, even when you feel like you're stuck in a downward spiral, one of those times where it feels like everything is going wrong.
Right.
The Stoics offer some really practical strategies for breaking free.
Like what? I think we could all use a few tips.
Yeah. Well, one of the key things is recognizing those negative thought patterns that are keeping you stuck.
Right.
And the author talks about a friend who caught a cold.
Okay.
And it triggered this whole cascade of negative consequences. He stopped exercising, started eating poorly, wasn't sleeping well.
Yeah.
And it all started affecting his work and his relationships.
Oh, I've totally been there. It's like one small thing goes wrong.
Right.
And then suddenly everything feels like a disaster.
Exactly. Yeah. But the book also tells a story of another friend who, facing like similar challenges, actively chose to shift his mindset.
Okay.
He started exercising again, eating healthier foods, making an effort to improve his sleep.
Okay.
And guess what? Those positive changes started to ripple out into other areas of his life.
So it's about recognizing that you have the power to break free from those negative cycles.
Yeah.
You're not just a victim of circumstance.
Exactly. You always have a choice.
Right.
Are you going to let those negative thoughts control you? Or are you going to actively choose a different path?
Okay. And, the book also makes this really interesting point about how hardship can actually strengthen us.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Right.
How can something bad make you stronger?
Well, the author uses the example of choosing to live without certain luxuries.
Okay.
Things that most of us take for granted. He talks about it as like a form of mental and physical training.
Right.
By embracing challenges, even small ones.
Okay.
We build resilience and we develop a deeper appreciation for the good things in life.
So it's like if you're used to things being easy all the time, you're not as prepared to handle the tough stuff when it inevitably comes along.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, okay.
And this idea of embracing challenges ties into another Stoic concept that I think is so important.
Okay.
Especially when we're going through hard times.
Yeah.
The idea of being your own best friend.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's something we often forget to do.
Right.
We're so quick to criticize ourselves, to focus on our flaws and our mistakes.
Yeah. The author even admits that, he used to be incredibly hard on himself. Much more critical than he would ever be of a friend.
Yeah, that's so relatable.
Yeah.
I think we all have that inner critic.
Yeah.
That can be pretty brutal sometimes.
Right.
But the Stoics would say, hey, why not treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend in need? There's this quote from Seneca that really gets to the heart of this.
Okay.
He said, what progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we all deserve grace and compassion, especially from ourselves.
Exactly. And, the book also offers some really practical advice for navigating specific challenges, like dealing with a recession.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds us that recessions are a normal part of economic cycles, and that even during tough times, there are opportunities for growth and innovation.
I like that perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the fear and doom and gloom, but history shows us that things eventually turn around.
Right. And the book emphasizes that even in a recession, you still have control over your own actions and choices. And there's this quote from Epictetus that I think is so relevant here.
Okay.
He said, "There's only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will."
It's a reminder to focus on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your integrity.
Yeah.
And to let go of the things you can't.
Exactly. And speaking of controlling what you can, the book also talks about the importance of precision in our words.
Okay.
Especially during challenging times. It's about choosing your words carefully and avoiding making assumptions about other people's intentions.
It's so easy to misinterpret things, especially when you're stressed or anxious.
Right.
The author uses the analogy of the backspace key when you're writing. Sometimes you have to edit your thoughts before you speak, just like you edit your words on the page.
That's such a great analogy.
It's a reminder that communication is powerful, and we can use it to create understanding and connection, even when those conversations are tough.
Okay. So we've talked about managing our thoughts, choosing our words carefully, being kind to ourselves.
Yeah. What other gems of wisdom did you find in this book?
Well, one that really stood out to me was the idea of doing less.
Okay.
I know it might sound counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But the book argues that, we often overcommit ourselves.
Right.
Constantly chasing highs and trying to do too much.
Right.
Which can actually lead to burnout and even physical injury.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
There's this pressure to be productive all the time, to always be striving and achieving. But sometimes you just need to slow down and rest.
And the author shares a story about a friend who injured his knee because he was overtraining.
Oh, wow.
He just wasn't listening to his body's signals.
Yeah.
And he also talks about how, we often chase those fleeting highs.
Right.
Like the sugar rush you get from eating a donut. Only to crash a few hours later.
So it's about recognizing that those temporary highs aren't sustainable.
Right.
And that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to simplify and focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. It's about quality over quantity. And it's about making conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy.
I love that it's a reminder to be intentional about your life.
Yeah.
Not just letting it happen to you.
And speaking of intentionality, another important concept that the book explores is the idea of finishing what you start.
Right.
It's about developing that sense of commitment and follow through, even when things get tough.
It's so easy to get distracted or discouraged and give up on things.
Yeah.
Especially when they challenge us.
And the author shares his own experience of sticking with his college degree.
Okay.
Even when he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with it. And, he realized later that finishing what he started, even when it was hard, built resilience and a sense of accomplishment.
It's about proving to yourself that you can overcome those obstacles and achieve your goals even when you have to push through those moments of doubt and uncertainty.
Exactly. And the book ties this back to the Stoic principle of focusing on the process.
Right.
Not just the outcome. It's about finding satisfaction in the journey itself and the act of learning and growing.
Right.
Regardless of the external results.
That's such a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
So, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From managing our minds and emotions to making better decisions and building stronger relationships.
Right.
What would you say is like the key takeaway from all this Stoic wisdom?
Well, I think it comes down to this.
Yes.
You have more power than you realize to shape your own life.
Okay.
Even when things are tough. Even when the world feels chaotic and uncertain.
Right.
You still have the power to choose how you respond, how you think, how you act.
That's so empowering.
Yeah.
Because it means that no matter what life throws your way, you have the tools to navigate those challenges with grace and resilience.
And the author actually ends the book with a quote that I think sums this up perfectly. He says, "You can decide to do something different in life. If it doesn't work out, so be it. At least you're not trying to fit in."
I love that. It's a call to action, an invitation to break free from those expectations of others and create a life that is truly your own.
This whole deep dive has been like a journey through timeless wisdom.
Yeah.
Wisdom that's just as relevant today as it was centuries ago.
Right.
The Stoics remind us that true fulfillment comes from mastering our inner world, making choices that align with our values, and embracing the challenges that life inevitably brings.
So as you go forth, dear listener, remember to focus on what you can control. Act with integrity.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself and never stop seeking wisdom.
And maybe most importantly, remember that you have the power to write your own story.
I love that.
What kind of life will you choose to create?
That's something for all of us to ponder.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Stoicism.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep living with intention.